Hello, Mooresville Graded School District. I'm Tanae McLean, your Communications Officer, and I'm here this morning with Dr. Stephen Mauney, our Superintendent of Schools, to talk to you a little bit about what this past year has been like for us as a district and our hopes moving forward. I do want to start this conversation by saying that both Dr. Mauney and I are fully vaccinated, so we are in compliance with NCDHHS regulations, although we don't have our masks on, but we are fully vaccinated. Shout out to Iredell Health Systems for that. All right, so first of all, let's get started. Would you like to start us off?
Sure, I just want to say welcome, thanks for joining us and giving us the opportunity to share a little bit of information about the Mooresville Graded School District and what we've done over the past 13, 14 months with the pandemic.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mauney. So let's just get started. First of all, when we left for spring break a year ago, a little over a year ago now, we had no idea that we were going home for good for the next year, basically. So talk about that. Talk about how we went home for spring break and then everything kind of hit and we had to plan and figure out what we were going to do in basically a week's time.
Sure. So, as we left for spring break, did not have really a clue that we were not going to be in school for the remainder of that school year. And I remember, we had heard a little bit about about COVID and what was kind of going on, and then got word that it was becoming more serious, and the likelihood of school closures would take place. And I remember just the uncertainty of everything that we had to deal with was a major obstacle, and we decided to extend spring break for a second week, which at that time was a big deal to close school for an additional week that was unplanned. And our folks did a great job with adjusting to remote learning within a week's time. Our support staff continued to work hard to be able to continue to provide meals for our community and provide just a lot of services, to continue those services for our community. But I just remember, the hours of planning that went into, changing our schedule to a fully remote schedule. It was very fortunate, I think, that we were able to keep, everyone employed, during that time. But it was just the uncertainty of, what was going to happen next, how long was this going to last, and we were just making, plans and decisions based on a lot of information that we didn't have, and so it was a huge challenge. And I know that we did not do things perfectly, but I do think that we did things effectively to continue to support our community.
Absolutely. So over the entirety of this past year, what's been the biggest challenge as a superintendent of public schools?
By far, the biggest challenge has been just the impact that this has had on our kids. Our kids have had to sacrifice so many things. I mean, you look at our senior class last year, our senior class this year, and so many of the milestone events that take place during a student's senior year have been non-existent. And so that has been that's not just true for our seniors, but all the way from, to our kindergartners and even our pre-K kids. There's been so much sacrifice that our kids have had to make, and it's taken a toll on them, emotionally, psychologically, and academically as well. And so that's been the major thing, that the most difficult part of all this is just knowing that although we are trying to meet the needs of our kids, and I think that we are doing so in making the best of a very difficult situation, just knowing that there are still things that we're not able to provide that we have traditionally been able to provide, and that that our kids and our families have suffered because of that has been the most difficult thing.
So our teachers have showed such resilience throughout this entire pandemic. Talk about what that means to you, and what you would like to say to them.
Well, the first thing I want to say to our teachers is you are awesome. And our support staff, you are awesome. To think back to the second week of spring break in the previous school year, to know that we made dramatic instructional model changes within a week to go from in-person instruction to fully virtual instruction is just amazing. The amount of work that they did to be able to do that in a week's time. And then for the continued adjustments that we made to that plan to make it more effective as we continue throughout the virtual learning over the course of the pandemic. And then to know how our support staff, our transportation employees, our bus drivers, our maintenance, our custodians, how even when we were uncertain and didn't really know the impact of the pandemic, that they still said, hey, we will come into work, where a lot of our folks were working virtually. Our bus drivers and transportation folks and maintenance, they still came into work face to face to provide meals, to transport those meals to community stops. And it's just it makes me very proud to know that I'm a part of an organization that even in the midst of the uncertainty and fear that many people had, that so many were still willing to step up and put themselves at risk and to provide for our community. And so I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, a heartfelt thank you to all of our employees who continue to put the needs of our community and our kids above our own needs. And I just think that that's a sign of a great organization and one that is truly valuable to our community.
Absolutely. It is always difficult when you are in challenging times. And this past year, for obvious reasons, we've had parents who have been very frustrated with some of our decisions, and we understand why. What would you say to them?
First, I think that frustration is a good word to use. That our kids have had to sacrifice and miss out on a lot, and as parents, we don't like to see that happen. We don't like to see our kids suffer, or and I think that a lot of times we felt helpless because a lot of the decisions that were being made and the mandates that came down from the state were outside of our control. And I know that this has been so hard, this pandemic has been so hard on many of our families and our kids, not just academically and socially, but financially, and that there have been many sacrifices that have been made. And so as a parent of 5 kids, 3 of which are still in our district at the high school, middle school, and elementary school levels, I understand that frustration to see how some of my own kids, they thrived during the virtual instruction, and others struggled tremendously during the virtual time. And so I just want to say thank you to our parents for persevering, for having patience with our district and continuing to support our district, and for really stepping up and taking on a lot of additional responsibilities that the school normally is responsible for, but our parents really stepped up and had to share that burden or take on a lot of those responsibilities. And so thank you for doing that for your kids, obviously, but that allowed our district to continue to operate in the best way that we could at the time. So thank you.
So one of the big buzzwords right now in education is learning loss, especially with the pandemic. Talk to us and our parents about what we are doing to counteract any learning loss, and even your own thoughts on the whole idea of learning loss.
Right, so there's no doubt that what our kids received instructionally over the last 15 months with the pandemic was less than what they would normally receive. And I think one thing that this has really shown is that there is no substitute, in my opinion, for face-to-face interaction and engagement with a teacher. And I think that's what a lot of our kids have really missed over the course of the pandemic. Now, I know that a lot of our kids have thrived in the virtual environment, but more so, I think more of our kids have struggled with that virtual environment. And so we're very optimistic about next year and being able to return to a much more normal, traditional school environment. But I think that the learning loss is, you can look at it a couple different ways. like I said, there's no doubt that our kids did not receive the same level and covering the same amount of content. And I think to address that, it's important that we really look at our standards and meet our kids where they are. That we're not going to just pick up next year like everything is normal. That we realize that we need to go back and really find where our kids are. And I think the key is going to be a sustained, gradual recovery of that content and of the instruction that was lost. I kind of look at it as a drinking from a fire hose versus drinking from a garden hose. If we try to catch up within the next school year, that's not going to be effective. It's going to be overwhelming for so many of our kids. Rather, we need to have a sustained approach over the years, over the coming years, to really get back to some of the foundational and the core skills that our kids need to have, especially at the younger grades, and work on that over time so that our kids are receiving it in a way so that they can retain it. And so I think that's the most important thing that we're going to do. Some immediate things will be, our extended summer program this year, which will be a 6-week program, which is, a much more expansive program than we've had in past summers. And so that will be one piece of it, but the most valuable parts will be what we do in the coming years to address that learning loss.
Very good. And summer school is open to everyone this year, and that will be in person. The state put down legislation around how that all had to look, so that will be in person if you're interested. So finally, you're hopeful about next year?
Very hopeful, very hopeful. I think that, we've seen some, with the vaccinations going on, I think that's had a major impact on the spread of the virus, and so I just feel like next year will be a much more normal year. Very hopeful for that. And one of the last things that I want to relay is just thank you for, like I said, your patience and your continued support. And one of the things that I really look at this is that although our kids have and our families have lost a lot and sacrificed a lot, I still think that we can look at the silver lining to this cloud. And knowing that we are coming out, we can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel. I think that we will come out of this stronger. And I do believe that, how we approach these struggles and the perspective that we have, if we can focus on the positives and what we are gaining as a result of this, as opposed to all the things that we have lost, if we can focus on those positives, then that really has a major impact on our attitudes as we move through it, as we persevere through it, and as we come out on the other side. And I've seen so many kids who have lost, who have suffered so much as a result of this, not focus on the things that they've lost, but they focused on, and they have even a greater appreciation for what we have now that, so many of our kids are back in school. And I think that's a great mindset and a great perspective to have. And so I'm very hopeful for next year. I know there's been so much excitement with our kids and our staff, being back together for those who have decided to come back to school, full time for this last quarter of the school year. And I think that momentum will serve us well as we enter the 2021-2022 school year.
And I know you've been out visiting the schools, and when you do come back, you're always so excited about being able to have seen all the kids out there. So I know we're all
Absolutely.
very excited to have them back in person.
Absolutely.
So I want to thank you for allowing me to communicate with you all year on as we go through all of this. And we truly look forward to all the great things that are coming. So thank you very much.
Have a great day.